I've just been told I should unmute myself so we can start this show with a little bit of sound. I'm Nina Corwin. I am a co-host of Traveling Molly's, the virtual version, and we are here tonight with a bunch of really solid open micers, mostly poetry, but a little bit of prose sneaking in. And our features tonight are Leah Graham and Lani Montreal. And as those of us who've been with us before will know, we'll start with the open mic, and then we'll have the features, and then we're going to go to a Q&A with the features. And somewhere in there, Al DiGenova, my co-host, will be joining us. But in the meantime, I will start with a poem. And our tech guy, who is my husband and a published author in his own right, will read something about what he reads about. But actually, because on the subject of mothers, which if you're listening from YouTube, you don't know that we were talking about mothers earlier, I'm going to read this poem called Swallow about my mom. Tonight, the topic is Prometheus and the origin of fire. Or maybe it's women's suffrage, another round of Name That Composer. But whatever mother might know, she knows better than to say, lips pressed together so nothing slips out when father pounds out assertions with all the certainty of catechism, the gospel of clenched fists. And even though she's gone back to college to study history since the last child started school, she knows it doesn't matter that much when women got the vote, when the Cold War heated up. Doesn't even matter who set the fire, just what it will take to keep the house from burning. She draws a slow breath and observes how it catches on the crags in her chest as she exhales, counting to 10 as she's done so many times she can't begin to remember the paisleys printed on the vinyl tablecloth, swimming through the silence as she counts in the custom of her mother and all the generations of mothers before that. And only yesterday, I saw a bumper sticker that read, well-behaved women don't make history. And I just want to know where it's written that God smiles on the girl that bites her tongue until her taste buds pop. When something is worth standing up for, and where we would be without fire, which would probably be right here, watching what happens at the dinner table over the paper napkins and the chipped china, what skulks between the salt and pepper shakers, landing flat in the mashed potatoes before they're cleared away. Amy and I watch closely as mother's eyes burn a bit, then dim. And we wonder if this is what she meant about letting the boy next door win at chess, about the slithery eel of the male ego, or when she says the potatoes will go down smoother and the bed won't be so icy after the lights go out. Thank you. Thank you. And maybe that's for my mom, who's feeling her way into a assisted living right now out in LA, where I am. But Bill Harrison, you've got a basket case of your own.
I do. Thanks for letting me read, wife. This is called Basket Case. Easter Sunday, 1962. The morning was thick and pallid. My father piled our family, my mother Barbara, sister Betty, and me. into our 58 Chevy sedan and drove us from our apartment in Flushing to somewhere in Manhattan. I was 6, my sister 15 months younger. Our nominally Jewish family celebrated Passover, not Easter. So as far as Betty and I knew, this was just another Sunday. Except that we'd normally still be in our PJs, parked in front of the TV, waiting for Mom to call us into the kitchen for cornflakes, or, if we were lucky, crisp French toast made with challah. Instead, my sister and I were hustled into dress-up clothes and bundled into the back seat of the car. Mom sat up front, uncharacteristically mute, as my father piloted the Chevy to his destination. Dad pulled over on a sleepy side street and hopped out. It had begun to drizzle. Be back in a jiff. Moments later, he returned, beaming, gliding side by side with a petite woman wearing a canary yellow dress and a toothy smile. Dad held an umbrella over her chestnut beehive, something I'd never seen him do for Mom. Yellow Lady carried 2 enormous baskets, bristling with green and yellow straw, one on each arm. Dad waved Betty and me out of the back seat. My mother did not move. This is Billy and Betty. Kids, say hello. Hello, I squeaked. Betty half hid behind me. The woman crouched and rested the baskets on the damp sidewalk. She rubbed my sandpaper skull, then reached around to give Betty's arm a little squeeze. The heady aroma of candy and perfume filled me with want. Yellow Lady handed each of us a basket. Happy Easter, Billy and Betty. Thank you, thank you. With a brief nod from Dad, my sister and I leapt back into the car and busied ourselves rifling through our treasure. We'd never seen anything like those baskets. Brightly painted eggs basked in a sea of Technicolor jelly beans. A giant chocolate bunny wrapped in golden foil perched regally in the middle of the whole beautiful mess. Don't eat it all at once, growled Mom. You'll get a tummy ache. We never saw the Yellow Lady again. The events of that Easter Sunday faded into obscurity. Even at those tender ages, my sister and I somehow already knew not to ask questions about unexplained things. In my late teens, Mom revealed that the woman had been the most recent of my father's girlfriends. He'd been cheating on her from the time Betty and I were toddlers. The Yellow Lady wanted Dad to divorce my mother so she could marry him. And she expected him to bring us along as part of the deal. We thought we'd hit the jackpot, but that day must have been a gut punch of humiliation for Mom. Why did she agree to go along for the ride? What kind of perverse chutzpah did it take for my father to schlep all of us to meet with his mistress on Easter so she could ingratiate herself with his children? In late 2019, shortly after Mom died, I asked Betty what she remembered of this incident. She didn't recall it. Perhaps she was a bit too young for the sheer weirdness of that morning to lodge in her long-term memory. As for me, the sight of an Easter basket or a chocolate bunny evokes shards of images from that long ago Sunday. The chilling drizzle, the sickly sweet smell of the Yellow Lady, my mother's bitter, silent collusion. Thank you.
I have heard that story before, and for some reason it got me chilled even more today. So moving right along, let's see, where should we start? Emily Cavill, glad you're joining us tonight.
I have to unmute myself. So I like that story, Bill. It reminds me of one that I have about a road trip where there's a lot of commotion in the car and just, living with dysfunctionality and chaos is, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to read a couple of short poems, three short poems actually. This one is kind of new. It was written when I noticed that I was getting one of those like lines that you get in your wrinkles in your chest, and so it's called Waking Again. When Grandma leaned in, I saw her cleavage sprout wings. Lines like a fork in the road cradled her pendant, reached for her shoulders. Decades later, the morning mirror reveals creases on my chest, a carved tattoo by side sleeping, brooks that branch north to reach my shoulders. Rather than remind me of time, this hieroglyph engraved by sleep cues V, another victory, delivered by sunrise. Okay. This one I came up with kind of after a global warming TV show or something. And anyway, I've been concerned a lot about climate change recently with all the droughts and fires. It's called Warm Regards for the Earth. I want Earth to chill, not be mined at will or stabbed by drills. Let's leave some stones unturned. I want Earth to chill. I don't want to recycle. I want to pre-cycle, not consume in the first place. Need what I have and have just what I need. I want Earth to chill. Do I need those paper plates or vapors that my car creates? Or I don't need three things that do the same thing. I need one thing that does three things. A knife is nicer than an apple slicer. A knife is better than a lemon wedger. A knife is neater than a tater peeler. I want Earth to chill. So I'll turn on a light just when I need it, ride cloud nine without ever seeding it. I want Earth to chill. Never again will I say it's only natural. Let's let this planet be superbly natural. All right, I got one more little one here. This I wrote, I was asked to perform at a dance company's show, and I thought it needed a dance poem. So it's called Everyday Dances. I can't dance, he says, his shoulders shrug. Yes, you can. We all dance. The dance of hesitation is a slow two-step, one foot to the other, side to side, stiff and unsure, going nowhere. A dance of defeat, weighs your head down, shoulders are parallel to the ground, small steps, small, slow steps make barely a sound. The nervous fear dance, hands fidget, makes the head twist back and forth. A foot taps like a woodpecker. The dance of joy is a jump in the air, arms flailing like a ballerina, but less graceful. To victory dance means feet fly forward, the face gazes ahead, arms wave like a conductor and two fingers shape a V. A dance of love begins when eyes lock, when fingers touch, arms move to an embrace. Sometimes the lips meet. In every dance, bodies move to the beat of the heart. Thank you.
So, Emily, is there any other kind of dance than dance of defeat?
I'm sure there's many. And I have to say that poem is a lot better when I'm on stage rather than on a Zoom, because then I can kind of like act it out, but doesn't quite have the same possibilities here. So I'm sure there's many, but this was a sampling.
But if you have to tell what a pun is, it's not.
Oh, I get it. All right, defeat. All right, yeah, I get it.
All
Duh.
right. Well, how are you?
I just want to say hello to everybody and apologize for being late, but I'm here, just jumped out of the car. And so hello, everybody out there in YouTube land as well.
And Al just got back from teaching up in Door County at the clearing. So he's just going from one poetry venue to another.
Yes, yeah, that's right. But now I can relax a little and enjoy other folks reading and talking instead of me being the teacher and talking.
So I will, we've only had Emily so far to bring you up to speed. I'm going to introduce Terry Lucas, and then you can jump in
Okay.
after that. So,
Okay.
so Terry, so glad you're here and that you haven't melted.
Thank you, Nina. It's great to be here, and it's great to see you again, and Bill again, and Al. It's been a long time since I've seen Al,
Yes.
and even Anne Marie. So and new poets that I hadn't met prior to tonight. So it's a delight to be here, and everybody out in YouTube land. So this first poem I'm going to read is dedicated to everyone who lives in Chicago or anyone who has ever lived in Chicago. I lived there nearly 20 years ago for 2 or 3 years. And this poem came out of that experience. It's called Dearborn. Once, walking in the snow on Chicago's Dearborn Street on my way home, or I should say to the place where sleep would nightly overtake me as I waited for Lake Michigan to confess something in the wet sand that might be tracks leading to a poem. I peered into the nothingness some see as water. Not even the moon reflected off its flat surface from that angle, and if ever an angel aimed moonlight toward me, it passed through my glass-topped desk, capturing nothing, a nothing that has everything to do with us. In Printer's Row, I stumbled onto a mound of pigeons, appearing as a single gray body of feathers and nacre, iridescent in the streetlight, fluffed and quivering, attempting to perform a miracle of holding the grave cold at bay beneath a sky with neither stars nor snow nor anything not fashioned from steel and concrete and glass. I thought on these birds gathered on the dirt white ground and how my life was in the sky in a 36th floor apartment, estranged from my wife who lived alone in the back bedroom, building her ceiling-high Lego models of skyscrapers, John Hancock, Sears Tower, and 311 South Wacker, the tallest building in the world with only an address for its name. I didn't see her for days. My companions were a Korg electric piano, a king-sized bed, and a see-through desk that fed me enough to stay alive. Everything I owned was in that living room. Even my closets were empty, clothes folded in suitcases, ready for flight. So ready had my phone rung, someone from my past offering a plane ticket to the West Coast and a proviso that I had to use it the next morning and never return to this city. I would have given up my piano, my desk, and my bed to the maids, ridden the L to O'Hare by 6 a.m., which in the end I did. But on that night, I wanted to stay forever, spellbound by those piled up city pigeons, forced from their roosts to the ground by steel spikes on windowsills, huddled together, burbling their brief triumph. And then, thank you very much. And then I have a very short one. I just completed a project of going through all of the 35 annual Best American Poetry anthologies and composing a cento from each anthology. Taking, as many of you know, cento is not written, it's actually assembled. So I found a line here, a line there throughout each anthology and created a poem. And then what I did, I erased my own cento, okay, every time to discover the poem inside the poem inside the poem. So I'll read one. It's pretty short, 2004. First line has to make your brain race. That's how Frank O'Hara does it, like an ice-bound tornado. Almost all the words we've said to one another are gone. What is the statute of limitations? We were going toward nothing all along. It's not the absence in the presence, but the presence in the absence. It is difficult to describe what we felt after we had paid the admission. Seems to me I have, and am thankful for the complete set of limericks and sensory topics. And there's plenty to be unhappy about as sunlight slants down on another late afternoon. I want a different dictionary and a different country. The poem offers a multiple fold for everything. I returned your books of poetry to the store. There they were, short, spread out, deathless, and without design. And yet, it didn't seem to matter at all. And the found poem inside of that poem that I erased is the following. It's called Break Up. Like a tornado, the words we said to one another were going toward absence. It is difficult to be the complete dictionary of not. Thank you very much.
You're muted.
For some reason, it doesn't want to stay off of unmute. But anyway, thank you, Terry. I enjoy centos myself. The assembling is quite a fun project. Okay, next up, let's hear from Anne Marie O'Connell.
Thank you. I was like, don't make me go after Terry. Thank you for having me. I'm going to read actually from this is my brand new manuscript that got published. It's called, I don't know if you can see it, it's called Clock. And it just came out like a couple weeks ago. So it's pretty exciting. Okay. Under every skirt is a slip. Under mine, he tells me, is a lifetime of them. When we drive right through Belvedere and into the trailer park. All the other railroaders fast asleep. I am trying to stay sober in this trailer with my AA sponsor. He was born 26 years before me on a table just like this. When he finally convinces me to have sex, I say my own name like my very first word, Annie. I am just some girl, dumb, almost despicable on his nerves, but he knows I should be dead, so he gets up as if he really loves me to peel the potatoes. When my sister lost her mind, it was a riot flowing electric in my fingers. My fingers remember suffering. I was a sail in the crosswind, flapping and shaking to the sound of my sister. I fled this woman for a few years to track down God. God was a flick between the thought and the next thought. She is schizophrenic, jumping out of ambulances, running from government-infested needles. She is so beautiful it hurts me. Once I saw a man stumble out of a taxi and into a bar so carefree, the sight of stone. I swore my sister was loosening and spilling inside him like water. By the window we danced as little girls, switching hands one foot to another. Love is beautiful like this. Love is learning all your life how to hit for your sister and how to fake the music. If you leave the knife on the table, I'll let you bite my lip until the blood runs down my chin. Stop looking up when you throw me against the bricks. Let me slide my hands through gravel as you step over my body. I lock you up and then I wait like a welt. When you get out and in the back seat, you're as filthy as a bed with your hands trembling for a fix around my neck and they're still craving things. If I'm on top, I think about what living people do. If I'm on bottom, I can feel my mouth almost ask you to build me a free woman. The 5 o'clock shadow wears white overalls and nervously smiles toward me in the crowded grocery store. his cart full of delicate cookies and bright red fruit. He doesn't know that I have already left this moment, even when it is happening. I am as anonymous as the smooth purple city, the brown hat squeezing the small head of a boy. Everything up to now is a secret, with teeth and bones trying to climb onto an old table to cool the switch on my body to light it up like a yellow leaf. And I could read one more, if that's okay.
Sure.
Consider heavenly things, the way I press my ear against a bed of rivers, against an argument, the black and red scarf surrounding your throat. I call out to your inner rooms, the one filled with junkies and sperm, the palsied elevator, the extra flight of filthy stairs with blown out druggies pulling on my pant leg to be reborn, maybe in Christ, or the dance of some scummy odor leaving their bodies. I call out to the junkie filled with salt for the spirit and canyons that overtake the sky as a ritual for a dying hawk. I call out to the junkie darkening my body, enlightening my heart with loneliness from bare fixtures and the sound of ex-mental patients chronically adrift without leases, begging to get inside and lie naked in your bed. We are a failed parade of junkies falling out of a fog, one perfect shoe sinking into how fully we live. It can break your heart. That's it. Thank you.
Our poets here birthed some remarkable books, and which actually leads me to say that there will be links to the features books on both in the chat, the Zoom chat, but also on YouTube. Is that right, or am I making that up? And either way, we will also provide a link to a place where you can donate money to the poets. In the absence of being able to pass the hat, we just ask that you click on that little button and pay, preferably with PayPal, and it's going to look like it's going to Al DiGenova's after hours, but he does distribute 100% of it.
So I was going to ask our features, Leah and Lani, if you would put any links to your books or the name of your books into the chat, I will put them into YouTube for you. And congratulations, Anne-Marie, on the new book.
All right, well, next poet, Carlo, it's always good to see you.
Okay, thank you so much, Nina, for having me back. It's always fun to be here. It's interesting that I'm reading after Anne-Marie because we read together a few years ago. I don't know if you remember that. I think it was a rhino thing, right? Yeah. Okay.
It was on a really snowy day in
right.
Evanston.
That's right. It was in Evanston and it snowed like crazy. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to read just a couple poems from my, I guess, latest book of poems called We Prefer the Damned. Yeah, I think that's all I got to say about that. This one is called Unfinished Comparatives. His need is gentle, as is the necessity to explore the particular expansions and contractions of character, the full vigor and mischief and perils of a person with bifurcated desires in a pair of old boxer shorts. He is gentle, but carries a quick left and a heavy right. However, the more he abstracts, the more he reduces to a page of lowercase letters. Each character a moment without development, each a particular instantiation, each a coordinate, but only one. When attempting to complete a rational thought, there is an urge to give way to incomplete syntactical structures like unfinished comparatives, like Benchley's stylish joke about being between the age of 14. What is crafted specifically to short circuit can impoverish or fill to the brim, losing one's head no less dramatically on the verge of simplicity as of complexity. Consider the extent to which interrogating confusion constitutes a dead end, or on the contrary, is a contest to control the shape of terror and fear, like how we survive and appear unscathed, like how we substantiate eyewitness accounts, even in the dark of my bed, in the object position of the beloved, in the containment of male bodies, so baffling and alien, though I have lived in one my entire life. His hands are those of a lumberjack, partially domesticated or partially defeated, carrying with them digits of experience and the will to be torn asunder by a fist earned without anger. My default reaction is also to go out swinging. So tuck your chin when you're carrying me, or we're both lost. Thank you. Okay, and this will be my last one. This one is called Devotional. On the one hand is the former Catholic boy. On the other is the man in the palm of a trickier devotion. To be clear, it's not about receiving or giving, top or bottom, male or female, nor will it be about ascension or damnation, and it has never been about destiny manifest or otherwise, or the search for the sea, but how desire can demand more guesses, more conjectures, more discriminations than are normally allowed. I loved a man once. If it was an act of subversion, I can't unfold it, nor could he. It was a fancy of rain falling on an umbrella, washing us clear from the face of the earth, or a raw desire of a poor boy reaching out from a new shore still unseen, and the realization that dirt is not all honest. Only those who work the land know this, and only they pay for denying it. When did completing a rational thought become a desperate challenge? Bilging like the day you realize old is just older than, just simple analogy in that you would not be young again for the whole of the new world. Make it a confession then, an absolution maybe, like a clawing of mosquitoes, drawing closer than sweat. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlo. Old is just older than. Good line. Let's see, who shall be next? Charlotte Hart, are you ready? You're muted, Charlotte.
I'm going to read a few poems from my new book, Desert. My collaborator, Adrian Caldera, who lives in Juarez, Mexico, he did the abstract digital art that goes with each poem. The poems are translated into Spanish as well as being in English. The name is Desert Flow. Interestingly, so many of us are reading about a mom. So here we go. Permission. Veins of blue ink bled, tinged with red blood of liquid words, flowing wet. They glistened, then dried. Bellows to my heart, not understanding what to do. Then the time came and did not give me permission. What did I do? Did I say something while she screamed awake in pain? Did I run into the surgery? Did I shout, stop, and push away the scrub's heartless speeding procedure. No, I stood in the hall and wept with empty hands while they hurt my mother. Courage let me alone, clutching a small rebellion stuck in my mind, uncertain, the face of authority turned cruel. Audacity, fling that fear. Do, here. This is Odysseus's doubt. At the base of your illuminated spine, peony petals unfolded like pages of my Odyssey, pendulum of distance swung to questions of resistance, to seduction, the depth of vast desire, rosy-fingered dawn, pink delight of new experience, passion seducing sweetly, discreetly, and present. What are you doing in your life of my long absence? This is Tempest Fugit. Your brazen spirit burst into me, meteor bright tonight, and then left me alone. This is the horror, this is the splendor. Every instant remains, everything is. The ancient biblical Exodus is, Renaissance Florence is. The emperor is drinking from his jade cup and strangling a scholar with his bare hands. Great-great-grandma is giving birth. Slavery is, freedom is, passion is, every species that ever was is. The moment before, being sealed in amber. A lute played, is playing, will play. The moment before, Pavlova dancing, the Parthenon is held up by the caryatids. Arbeit frei is, flowers budding, blooming, leaves falling, snow, the hidden future. See that teak boat with double masts in full sail as we go our ways. We said forever and linked our names and bodies with no space between. Do you think that as we go farther and farther, forever was exuberant truth swallowed by facts? No, that touch lingers. Its fingers slowly move up the thigh of my memory. You will never go. You gone isn't you. Claims of forever, oddly, terrifyingly, sweetly, are forever.
What amazingly diverse voices we have in this open mic. Just think of the different musics and languages. Thank you. And next, speaking of different languages, Bob Chico. What do you got?
I've got a couple of short stories that I'd like to think that they're poems. Fish cakes. When my old friend Wayne began to lose his mind, he would, as he walked outside, reach up and grab a leaf from any overhanging tree, stuff it whole into his mouth to chew and swallow. I worried that one day he might pluck off a henbane or belladonna or arbol de la muerta, tree of death. But he remained content in his plateau with maples, sycamores, ash, and ginkgo. I thought if he ever came across the tree of knowledge and ate a leaf of that rather than the fruit, he just might be rewarded with the garden in which he wouldn't need to use his mind at all. These days, when I pass beneath a tree that stands above a sidewalk alongside a railroad trestle or alone on a hill, I raise an arm and brush the lowest leaf with my hand, no stiffer than a light wind, and say to it in Wayne's voice like no others, "Hey, it's crazy out there. Pretty crazy, you know." Well, it turns out we can eat almost anything to stay alive, and someday the old arbors will eat us. Meanwhile, pass this on to anyone who passes beneath into their deep shade. The tree has questions of those of us who do not stay in place. Go ahead, raise your hand to answer. Stain yourself green. The second is to go on pilgrimages. To go on pilgrimages. Remember when Robert Bly, at the end of his career, would always read every poem twice when he read live? That was so cool. Reading the title twice. For his last day on the job, the Wendella tour guide decided he would introduce all the sites and points of architectural interest along the south branch of the Chicago River by reciting the prologue to the Canterbury Tales in the original Middle English. Wander April with the shore sota, the drift of Merch had pierced to the rota, and bathed every vein in switch liqueur, of which vertu engendred is the floor. He gestured roundly with his hands as he held forth, as if to create a breeze that the boat and water could not, or to convey some piece of information that begged to be remembered in the wake. Virus ache, with his swayed of breath, inspired hath in every halt and hath the tondra croppies, and the yum zona hath in the rams have cool zirona. So sincere he seemed in his delivery, so confident in his text, that it took a while before the complaints rolled in and the captain had to cut his mic. And smalle foules machen melodie that slepen all the night. But there was one child on board, bound by the spell, who knew then, when he grew old, what he would say aloud to the river when the ferrymen rowed him against the current toward the other world.
Bob, your sound cuts out every now and then.
So we missed the last lines. So if you don't mind giving them to us again.
Yeah, just the last few.
Yeah.
But there was one child on board, bound by the spell, who knew then, when he grew old, what he would say aloud to the river when the ferrymen rowed him against the current toward the other world.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. I think we have one more in our open mic tonight, which is Patricia McMillan. How you doing, Patty?
Hi, I'm so sorry. I spaced out and I guess I missed the first few readers. Emily.
Well, you weren't the only one who was late. I was also late, so.
Oh, no. Right. So I have two, one very new and one very old. And I'm going to read the first. I'm going to read the old one first. I think it's Tercerima, but it might not be. It's called The Butterfly Museum for a Nephew. Because you can't be 8 forever, we, my younger sister and I, will take you to visit butterflies. Here, patiently, you'll teach us what mere mothers' ants don't know. Life cycle of the Lepidoptera, slow turn of pupa into imago, how monarchs recall milkweed over 4 generations, trace unseen trajectories, rediscover lost selves on unknown shores, then rest for days, bright fabric draped on trees. In humid air we idle, eyes alert for flash of common morpho blue, pale green of scarce bamboo page. Your fingers arc, counting cocoons arranged in groups of 4. Gray cracker, malachite, swamp metalmark. You've memorized their eye spots, hind and fore. Your grandma's youngest grandchild, you try hard to prove you're not so little anymore. While I linger, dream of a distant park, rehearing as my sister calls to you the sound of your grandmother's voice at dark, those muffled words she spoke before we flew. And this one, thank you. This is called Our Friend Dave is Reincarnated as a Bedbug. There was a word, oh yeah. The only word that is going to be impossible to read is spelled Halfz, and I'm going to pronounce it halves. Our friend Dave is reincarnated as a bedbug. The three of us are having cocktails together via text message with occasional photographs. One of us is in a rainstorm. I love thunderstorms, she texts, while another is watching a cicada emerge from the last of the practical brown husks in which it spent its first 17 years, unfurl its shiny Tinkerbell wings. They seem to like the underside of my patio chairs, she texts. I'm making an epic margarita with homemade cucumber shrub, texting a picture of the final product, liquid the lime green of cicada wings in a martini glass on a kitchen counter beside a half-finished sheet of capsules I didn't think to hide. What drugs are you doing? The first friend texts. From inside the rainstorm, the other two of us can't feel or hear. And I reply, probiotics for my dog. We're talking, in short, about anything other than Dave, our friend who died in Georgia a month ago before any of us could get there to say goodbye. We are all grieving, our separate and individual griefs intertwined, though not quite touching, for the man the one in the rainstorm once shared a North Side Chicago brick 2-flat with, before he came out and moved to Georgia with his half-blind brother and Mexican-American lover. There, the local press ignored the obvious racial and sexual overtones, greeted the trio as three brothers from Chicago. Now Mario's the only one left. We all say, he was too young, but what we mean is that we are too young. The one of us with the newborn cicada is drinking champagne, has been drinking champagne, starts to get a bit sloppy. My mother had half a brain, she texts. True story, fell out a window when she was 1 to 3 years old. I text back, how did it take 2 years to fall out a window? And then the one in the thunderstorm cuts in. Do you think it's Dave? Meaning the floods, the lightning. And I misunderstand, say what, the cicada? And then she texts the story of when the corporate interviewer asked Dave if he was gay, something we all agree wouldn't happen today. And he replied, gay as a bedbug in a rug. And at that moment, we all three hear Dave's voice, his wicked belly laugh. We feel his presence, as sure as I taste the salty, sweet cucumber shrub I made yesterday for a special occasion. Thank you.
Well, that concludes another wonderful Traveling Molly's open mic. For those of you who want to be considered for the open mic, we encourage you to toss your hat in the ring somewhere between 2 weeks before and, well, 5 days before, and then we'll choose from among them. And the way to do that is if you have either of our emails, or if you're one of our friends and can message us on Facebook, or let us know on the Facebook page for Traveling Molly's. Before I go into introducing our features, Al, do you have anything to say?
Do I have anything to say? Well, other than that I enjoyed that open mic. Not particularly. I'm looking forward to our features. I'm still wrapping my arms around jumping out of the car and into into an open mic. But I would also like to say hello to our YouTube audience. People keep jumping on, so there's a number of people out there. So everyone here knows that there's a wider audience than just us here on Zoom. And I will be posting some books of our features so the YouTube folks will know where their books are at as well.
And YouTubers, if you want to drop us a little message, let us know you're there, then Al might share with those of us on Zoom that you're there and listening. It is, I think we're all kind of used to it, but by now, but it is kind of weird to be reading to an invisible audience. So it's nice to know that you're here. So I'm gonna introduce our features, and I didn't do it earlier, but do either of you have a compelling interest in either going first or second? Okay, I've got 2 nods. So Lani, would you get us started? And I just want to say something about Lani Montreal. She's a queer feminist Filipino writer based in Chicago. She writes poetry to keep her sanity and discover her truths. Her chapbook, Fanboys, poems about teaching and learning, came out in 2018. And if you want to get your hands on it, it's at Finishing Line Press. She's a proud 3 Arts residency recipient from 2008 and again 2016, and a 2017 Voices of Our Nation alumni. And I'm thinking too, you didn't put this in the bio about being a member of that, is it Pin Ticket Collective?
Yes, because I have a separate bio for theater, separate bio for poetry. But yes, I'm part of the theater company, the circus that I ran away with, called Circa Pintig. I'll talk a little bit more about it later on. Thank you. Should I start now?
Absolutely.
Thanks. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for inviting me, Nina and Al, to be here tonight. I'm going to start with a disclaimer. Okay, it's a piece called Poet, a disclaimer. I think myself not worthy of the title. Poetry does not come easy for me. It is like a crush in high school I dreamt about at recess, who didn't even know I existed. It's not natural, not for me, not always. But when poem comes, it's like that one night stand that lasted for days, curtains drawn shut in a cramped air-conditioned room, the moldy smell of condensation mingling with sweat and cum. There are days, weeks, months even, when poem plays hard to get. And I ache for her, raise my hand high so she picks me. Poem, me, I plead. But poem passes over, picks the disengaged daydreamer, looks straight at me. She's been calling for days, she says, but I was too busy to answer. Sometimes poem likes to play hide and seek, climbs into a wardrobe box, sits still till found, then jumps out when I peek, hugs me tight, glad it was me who found her. But I know what it's like to never want to be found. I've been there before, in the coffin of mothballed meter and jilted rhyme. I know how easy it is to lose oneself in the smells of forgotten sins. Poem, me, I plead, as if I truly want to be poemed. I can make myself smaller than a word, Breathe in quiet hiccups till it's ambient, and stay in the dark until I choose to be found. This one is called Misplaced. When anger is misplaced, it appears randomly. A broken mug, cracked ribs, splinters of curses on the ground. If you step on them, you might trip and fall even though they were not meant for you. Person who threw them may have intended them for you, but he doesn't realize he was angry for something else. It's been so long he has forgotten. He doesn't think that wounds ignored fester neath proud flesh, never heal, never turn into scars. When anger is misplaced, a whole nation suffers. Bullies become bullets and bullets become bosses. Playgrounds turn into war zones, schools into shelters. Betrayed little bodies huddle, dodging anger not meant for them. Bow heads, close eyes, shrug shoulders, tuck elbows, hold hands, stifle scream, make self small, smaller, smallest. Think happy thoughts. And so in the last few years, you know, we've suffered a lot of losses. I know I've suffered a lot of losses, and think it comes with age too, when you're aging, and the people you look up to, your mentors, your parents pass away. But then there are also your friends, who are same age as you. I still can't wrap my head around 2 million people we lost in the last 3 years from COVID, right? And then there are those that are COVID related. And so I just started writing these poems. They're called Poems for the Dead, and they're really more for me. But I will share a few with you tonight. And I titled them with the names of the people who inspired them. And so this one is called Valerie. I knew Valerie from Malcolm X College where I teach. And she was my first friend there. And she passed away. This is like tomorrow will be the second year of her death anniversary. And her birthday actually was, it's 2 days. So it's 2 days before she would have turned 42 or 44 this year. This piece is called Valerie, August 9, 2020. Her hugs were the tightest, the way she'd squeeze you breathless as if to hold on to this place. It lingered for days, her embrace. This one is called Anne, and she's a really good friend of mine who moved to Toronto, and she was part of this work collective that I was with. It's called Mango Tribe, and it's a collective of Asian American women artists. So this is Anne, January 27, 2021. Grief in America can be put on hold. It is like waiting on the phone as elevator music plays. Must clean kitchen, must help with homework, must grocery shop, must make fun 15th birthday, must keep things from breaking, must do this to keep from doing that which hurts. Short black hair framing pixie face, obsidian halter, slender frame. That girl on the blue line walked in like she owned the ride, a gate like she didn't care, but she did so much. I can smell laundry soap on my shirt. I have no COVID. My car is buried in a blanket of virgin snow. My daughter just texted, I love you too. But your face hovers like a hummingbird, the golden blue lace abaya from sisters in the smoke hanging on my wall. I'm having a hard time wanting to live with your dying. It doesn't seem fair that I should keep breathing, keep appreciating the fine line of snow that makes this tree so beautiful. And now a pinging 26 days after you wrote 30. How can I help celebrate your birthday now that you're gone? Fuck Facebook. And this one is called Chris. This was very recent. Chris was a friend, but also a guru, or he was our martial arts teacher, and he taught Arnis and Skrima, which are, Philippine martial arts. This one is called Chris. Nobody talked about you last night. Last night, nobody talked about you. But your absence was present amid the sushi bake and ribs, the charcuterie, the red wine, bourbon, whiskey on the rocks, the karaoke mic, the silly asides, bereft banter, punishing pauses, the not wanting to talk about you. And of course, with all these people dying around you, you can't help but think about your own mortality. And so I wrote a piece about that as well. It's called If I Die Tomorrow. And this one, it came out in a, which I put it actually in the chat. It came out in a anthology called Lit Bop, Art and Literature in the Groove. And the second volume is actually coming out, so please watch out for it. Again, it's called Lit Bop, Art and Literature in the Groove. And this piece is called If I Die Tomorrow. If I die tomorrow, please make a fucking fuss. I traveled around the world to be something. You will not cry as if my dying means nothing. If I die tomorrow, I hope it will be easy. I denounce difficulty. Hard work is too hard, yet I did wash dishes 10 hours a day. I did walk in below zero cold to get to work, clutching my lungs as if they were going to fall out. I did wait tables and dealt with messy eaters, filled empty condiment bottles with ketchup, soy sauce, and vinegar, smiled until my face hurt for an extra $1 tip. I did take care of children who colored their sky pink and their monsters purple. When I first crossed the border and my savings ran out, I wanted to go back home, there where people thought I could be something. I wanted to stay a teenager on my friend's porch, drink gin and 7-Up at dusk, play mahjong all night, smoke stolen Marlboros till my lungs hurt and my throat torn to shreds, pray I do not wake, coughing blood-tainted phlegm. Sometimes the things that keep us alive are the things that kill us. Remember the white guy in Kung Fu found dead in a closet? Amy Winehouse, Whitney Houston, the water was still warm in the tub when they found her. And what about that pretty young thing who inched her way to the brink to catch that perfect selfie? Did she even get to post it? Took 6 hours to pick her off the landing. If I die tomorrow, sure, say some prayers, although I prefer poetry, toasts and tales, and yes, a little karaoke. My dog would lie down on my side of the bed, waiting for me to pet her. I know at least my daughter would cry. She always cries when sending me off at the airport. I know my husband would say jokes. And my son would smoke weed all day and hide his grief in the fog. And so that's called If I Die Tomorrow. I want to share with you a couple more pieces. This one is from this Fanboys, right? Oh, I can't see it. Can you see it? Okay. It's Fanboys, Poems About Teaching and Learning. And it's my first chapbook, and I don't know, maybe it's the only one, but we'll see. Okay. I really enjoy writing poems. It's not easy. I mean, it was one of the hardest classes that I took in my MFA. But I think of myself more of a playwright, and so I do hope I can still come up with another book, right? So this piece is called Gendered Relations. We are queer, not in the way queer as folk is, or queer eye for the straight guy. We have unconventional friendship, you and I, taking risks, but not in the way Will and Grace do, playing up gay, straight, sexual tension on primetime TV. We trade secrets when we're drunk on Chianti in between reruns of classics on cable TV. The boundary between us like unwanted ads selling gas pain relievers during scene breaks and Citizen Kane. Color intruding into black and white, but not making gray areas any clearer. We meet in brightly lit street corners, you and I. Gender bending, but not in the way straight actors who play transsexuals do, leaving normal by sequence 32. We make gender our science experiment, growing it in controlled biospheres, or leaving it to rot and fester in dark chemistry lab cabinets. You say there is no absolute truth, waxing philosophic midway through Symphony number 40 in G minor, and I, uninspired, wonder. If you're right, then what makes a lie a lie? Whose truth matters when a woman's body remembers what her child mind had chosen to forget, when gender is nothing but a prison sentence, and the judge is always a brother of yours? We are queer this way, you and I, challenging perceptions, but not like Angelina Jolie tonguing her sib at the Oscars, although it does make me curious when I let myself dream on nights when you call past midnight, bold with inebriation, and tell me you love me. Or when you wrap my wet hands in the kitchen towel, gently turning like uncooked spring rolls, our indiscretion illumined by the light from the half-open fridge. Or when you knead my tired feet after a long walk on the littered sidewalks of Chicago, when you would not even give me a full hug, afraid perhaps of what it might arouse, or fearing emasculation from a show of unbridled affection. It makes me quiver and smile, conjuring cinematic scenes. No, not those my mother dreamed for me, even after the discovery of my woman lover in the closet. My fantasy does not lead to church ceremonies or white picket fences. It comes with no strings attached, like Gina Gershon molting sexuality past the racing credits. We are queer this way, you and I, like low-rise jeans snug around my hips, but letting my ab flab hang and breathe, like tight-ribbed designer sweater hugging your newly toned pecs. We are queer this way, you and I. And in my dreams, we make babies born without umbilical cords. That piece. Thank you. And then I'm going to read two more. One piece is from this book called They Rise Like a Wave. I will also put the link. And it's an anthology of Asian American women poets. And this piece is called Things to Remember from This Trip Back Home. So I haven't been home in 3 years. I really miss my family, but that's just the reality of immigrant life, especially when there's a pandemic going on, right? So, but I hope to visit them soon now that the numbers are going down. So this piece is called Things to Remember from This Trip Back Home. You never bring enough clothes to the beach. It matters to look nice, even in this heat where you sweat, stink, take more showers, sweat. Here, flavors explode without apology. Coffee is strong when brewed, but not when in 3-in-1. Dessert is too sweet, too plenty. Don't be scared that someone in your family will go into a diabetic shock. Their blood is a quarter sugar. Your teeth will crumble into salt after eating something savory. You'll keep tasting patis long after you've left. Don't forget that here people love hard. They are always teenagers in search of a high. Love is best when illicit, lechon when the leche. The sun sears your skin till it's crispy. The rains will give you pulmonia. Mosquitoes will fuck you over as if you did them wrong in a previous life. They'll make your nose bleed, your blood count low. You will blow through your money like rain falling through broken roof. It is cheap, so cheap you can get 3 massages in a week, treat everybody to a movie, buy things you will never use, pasalubongs for people who didn't even know you left. Lives too are cheap, so cheap. People are shot for smoking weed, children from sniffing glue. Collateral damage. Politicians have billboards the size of a building, no choice but to stare at them when stuck in traffic and at whitening products peddled by mestizas. You will be stuck in traffic more than once, perhaps your lifetime, in fact, more often than not. So don't forget to be patient. Maybe rent a personal hotspot. Make sure you're never without Wi-Fi, always connected. Some days, though, the road is clear, not congested. Time matters, is not wasted waiting or looking at billboards or at crowds of passengers stranded at bus stops, waiting for a ride home past midnight. Remember, because the gap steals your memory, you don't recall the bumpy ride on the jeepney at 2 a.m., how the men molested you with their sleepy heads, their open legs, their restless arms, elbows that creep against your exposed skin. Don't forget you left your summer clothes behind, languishing in your sister's closet till your next visit. Your mother won't be giving them away to disaster victims. She's not there anymore. Don't be wondering when summer in Chicago comes and you can't find your blue dress. You remember, you live in the in-between. Nothing is ever really lost. So I have one last piece to share with you. And this came about after we did a workshop in my theater group, which is Pinte Culture Group. We had a workshop where we talked about the spate of violence against Asian Americans in the United States. At the onset of the coronavirus, and it's still going on, and it has been going on for a while. But this is, what we did is the prompt was this phrase that, or this phrase that we heard too many times in this country. It's go back where you came from. Go back where you came from. I came from my father's clavicle and my mother's deep-set eyes. Before that, I lived in my grandmother's wish, and the curse my grandfather spat when my mother came home, heavy with sin. I came from places you can't even imagine, where stars fall in the water in the quiet of night, and the moon is not afraid to be seen with the sun. A place where the sky is red with murder at dawn, and seabirds swoop down for dinner at dusk. Do you want to go there with me? Come, fear not. I'll massage your mandible till you relax and open your jaws wide, 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 so I can fall, 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 fall into where you came from. Thank you so much.
I am having a hard time managing technology here, so I hope you'll all bear with me while I try to figure it out. So we're moving right along. This is just not right. Okay, here we go. So my mother's calling. That's good to know. So, that was just so lovely. And I have a feeling that Leah's going to be very, very different, and we're just going to feel two very different spirits. But let's see what we get. Leah Graham is a writer, editor, and translator who lives in Hyde Park, New York, though she spent many years here in Chicago. And I think you were just saying 10 years, and this is where you got your graduate degree. All right. And she's the author of 2 poetry collections, From the Hotel Vernon, on Salmon Press in 2019, and hopefully I'll read this right, Huff and Helix, and Where and Here and You. That's on No Tell Books, 2011. A fine press book and 3 chapbooks. Recently, she edited the anthology of critical essays From the Word to the Place, a work of Michael Anania on Mad Hat Press. She also won the Michel Boisseau Poetry Prize. She's an associate professor at Marist College, where she's been on faculty since 2007. Leah, let's hear from you.
Thank you, Nina. Can you all hear me okay? Okay. And yeah, and thanks, Bill, for all of your IT expertise, and thank you, Al, as well. It's a pleasure to be here, and Lani, it was lovely to hear you. It'll be interesting. I don't know how different, anyway, but I also have to tell you that when you were talking about how difficult poetry was in terms of your MFA, I've always wanted to be a playwright. So yeah, so we can talk about that at some point. So I'm going to begin. It's nice to go last in the way that then I get to follow and kind of hear the themes that other people have been reading about. And so certainly mothers have been a thing tonight, and Chicago has been a thing tonight. So I'm going to start with a couple of poems from my chapbook, Spell to Spell, that came out in 2018, but that's part of a larger, my 3rd book of poems that's out trying to find a place in the world, called the OED Odes. And these poems mostly take a word and its definition and sort of spin out from there. So almost all of the poems, except the one that I'm going to start with, really start with a single word and its definition. But the one I'm going to start with is called Bounty of the Free World. And since we haven't had a Trump poem, you know, anyway, so here we go, Bounty of the Free World. My mother calls him P-Mert because she says she refuses to say his name again. His name, she says, a name she hears which feels here all the time, seems in the air, in her ear, she says everywhere, and so renames him in reverse. A tick, soft con, or kid's trick, like when we used to fall for spelling GIP backwards every time, turns him like a clock, witter-shinning that Fifth Avenue tower, undoing the spell of time and place and lack, retracts name's power. My mother names him armless, superfluous, a swaggerless rapper, whose rhymes are brands, whose brands are witless innuendo, a nip, a flash, the status quo, easy mart, quick trip, come and goes, hot dogs, sweating under heat lamps, bacon air deodorizers, penny pools and platitudes on plaques, on koozies or caps, keep calm and carry on. I don't get drunk, I get awesome. A mechanical catfish singing above the register, bad to the bone. So that was, thanks. That was a few years before my mother's Alzheimer's diagnosis. But one of the nice things is getting, even in that it's a horrible illness, but you were starting to see like the comic in her coming out, even as she was making fun of Donald Trump in her own way. The second poem I'll read is a Chicago poem called Dazzling. And it's dedicated to my teacher and my dear friend, Michael Ananiah, who I studied with for many years and who's on whose work I just edited this last year. That was Chicago then. We sat around a table like other grad students all over the country, discussing language's coagulation into the graduating gloam. Ashbury's convex mirror, McGrath's letter to an imaginary friend, Levertog's evening train, pigeons cooed and shat those brutalist ledges, the bulletproof windows. Stairwells stunk of not-so-secret smokers. The Eisenhower rushed the roar to screech of the Blue Line, Greektown's Opa, and flames just north. Goat carcasses and wood smoke and vacancies pock the south. Speak softly, love, floating from an open door just off Taylor Street. Dazzling. It was how he said it. Daz stretched the mouth wide as a marquee, showcased that gap between his front teeth, a sign of randiness, if Chaucer is believed, alluring in theos for the poem. Made you think back to those years the stroll hopped when Satchmo joined King Oliver, arrived Central Station in his hick pants and white socks, a real rube all the way from New Orleans come to play. Or Dorothy in her pinafore before Emerald Oz, Bomb's vision of shy. Forget the burned inner thigh, the asbestos snow job, a sweet blinding steeliness, a scintilla, a sound. So I went to school. I did my master's and my doctorate at UIC. So hopefully you could hear some of that. But also I didn't know, so Michael and I had given a talk about the Wizard of Oz, and that I had no idea that Chicago was Baum's Emerald City. I had no idea. Anyway, so that's somewhat where that poem's coming from. And then I'm going to read a poem about, I moved around a lot as a kid. I grew up in Northwest Arkansas and moved a lot, like almost every couple of years. I was in a different school or a different part of the city or another sort of place in the state, and then I moved to Joplin, Missouri, my junior year in high school. And so all this moving around, it made me, I don't know, it made me want to move around more. It didn't necessarily make me want to stay any place. But anyway, I used to do a lot of daydreaming like you do in high school, because I absolutely hated Joplin. It was one of those places that I couldn't wait to get out of. And then in writing this poem, one of the things that I found in researching was that actually Bonnie and Clyde had holed up in Joplin, Missouri. And so the famous photographs of them, where they're holding the shotguns, if you've seen those, you can find them easily online. They were there in Joplin. That's where they were holed up and they left their camera behind, and that's where it took place. Anyway, so this poem, Escapeful, meaning to giving a chance of escape, makes me think baleful grateful, pitiful. That window in Joplin, Missouri at 17, a wishful transom that led to the roof behind the honey locusts, where I went, dreamt away as if it were its own country, country of not here, where I was then in that age of me, grazing desire to light out from that grayed-in mining town, the city that Jack built, Jack being zinc and sinkholes dotting 35.6 square miles from Rangeline Road to Souls Harbor to Crystal Caves, filled in for a parking lot where Bonnie and Clyde holed up in the 30s, played rummy, chain-smoked camels, robbed, killed, fled, left behind a film-filled camera, the globe developed. Bonnie's Mary Jane poised on fender, Clyde holding her in a bride over threshold pose, or that shot with arm akimbo and pistol, hip cocked and cigar at lip, while skirting the edges of Bienville Parish, their ambush turned circus-like. The coroner said, throngs gathering to cut the bloody locks from Bonnie's head, Clyde's trigger finger and ear, gathered shell casings and shattered glass from the Ford V8 sold as souvenirs. Something I thought about in passing that Sunday. We strolled through Porridge after mussels and schnitzel past that 4th century church, its marble from the Sea of Marmara, an old Christian hideout, its bell tower, a lookout into a western blue. There were candles to light, gelato to try, baseball jerseys for sale hanging from rafters in the shops. Bonnie #1, Clyde #2. So it was a totally bizarre instance of finding souvenirs in, of all places, Croatia, with Bonnie and Clyde's name on the back of them, of these T-shirts. I think I'll read, let's see where we are with time here. I don't want to keep it goes. I'll read one more out of this, and then I'll read a few from the book, from the last full book from the Hotel Vernon. The last piece that I'll read from here is called Widdershins, a noun, which means counterclockwise, to do anything backwards. And the epigraph comes from Robert Duncan. There's the hero who struggles east, Widdershins to free the dawn. He must struggle alone toward the pyres of day. 1. I woke up yesterday thinking, Wonder Twins, that old cartoon in which the heroes are brother and sister with rings that when pressed together turn them into weight of an iceberg, speed of an eagle. The twins' talent for solutions was never obvious. No primary gift of flight or fin, no magic lasso or gadget, protean, the slipperiness of gods. 2. When we used to spin in summer yards, we learned we could change the world by dizzying ourselves. Early intoxication in movement, blue rush, then green, collapsing self to place, laughter to centrifuge of sky, dervishes of the lawn before knowledge, before thought. 3. Turn turtle, what British sailors called capsized ships, anything flipped upside down, topsy-turvy, arcy-versy, inverted, retains the profane, connotes confusion, the root meaning of awkward in Old English. Now, what the kids name the new cool. I don't think they say that anymore, but a few years ago they did. 4. Those giant tortoises could live on their backs a year without food, below in the holds while at sea, shells that floated them through the Humboldt from mainland to island, century to century, turned them water and oil and soup. So a few years ago, I was able to, more than a few years ago, 15 years ago, I was able to take students to the Galapagos Islands and got to see those giant tortoises, which is really just quite amazing. So I'm going to read a couple of pieces from the Hotel Vernon, and then I'll close. Maybe two short ones and one slightly longer one. This book comes out of my time living in Worcester, Massachusetts. And as I was about to move to New York, it's a longer story that we don't have time for, but I'm happy to tell it. If you're interested, contact me. But there's an historic hotel in Worcester that was built in 1899 called the Hotel Vernon. So it was built at the turn of the century, and it was very elegant at first. It was meant to be for politicians to go and do their backdoor deals at the edge of the city. So it was really had a long, beautiful oak bar and all this sort of thing. And initially, pretty famous people were there. The painter Al Cap painted one of the murals. Now I'm blanking on names here of all the different famous people, but different baseball players hung out there and drank there and stayed up in the hotel. Anyway, long story short, the hotel that is still functioning 123 years later each decade sort of fell into dereliction a little bit more. So it kind of went from being elegant to then there was prohibition. And then it kind of became a community, kind of a neighborhood place. And then by the 1970s, it was being called like Bucket of Blood and things like that. It's kind of had a bit of a renaissance. But anyway, I found myself bartending there one summer, and a lot of characters that lived upstairs. It was kind of a flop house at that point, back in like 2007 when I initially wrote this book. Anyway, so a lot of these poems are about the stories people told me and the kind of historical research I did, and just the experience of being there. So I'll read a few of these and then I'll close. So the first one's called Kelly Square Love Song, and Kelly Square is where the hotel's located. I write a poem about eating eggs with you. 1 month passes, you tell me you hate eggs, even scrambled. This woman half waltzes, half staggers into the Vernon. She loves the word gorgeous. She says, gorgeous blondes. And we three are gorgeous. And this is a gorgeous day. She's lost a youngest son, a house, land in County Cork, they say. She wears a peignoir, black and pilled like a noble obligation. No panties. Pisses herself standing up. I forgive your dislike of eggs. Recall your fingers poised before Sweet Thing, before Thunder Road, before Dream Baby. Your perfect pitch. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. The second short piece, Sentences for the Baker. Thank you. There was a character there that used to come down to the bar all the time, and he always just evokes sorrow, and you just felt sorry for him. Anyway, so this is his. There was a lot of stories about him, lots of rumors. Nobody really knew. Anyway, Sentences for the Baker. In jail, they say, he learned tactics of a tiny man, slept in his own shit, foiled the sodomizers, and years before demoted from baker to mopper among rumors of incest, illiteracy. The 12-year-old chicken plucker of Water Street, known to feed the Vernon mice, those tiny sailors, saltines and nips at noon. Once on a Friday night, Two spangled Holy Cross girls plunged their hands into that bearded nest, danced him beneath Joe Myron's muraled sailors and seas, the mariner's albatross still in flight, circa 1940. He said something was sprouting in his neck. He said, I don't come down here for the beer, you know. He said, it's lonely all day alone up there. So I'll just tell you, before I read the last piece, I'll just tell you that the cover of the book, thank you, the cover of the book is part of the murals that are there that were painted in the 1940s. And the bartender was the owner's son-in-law, and he was a trained painter. And his favorite poem was Rime of the Ancient Mariner. But of course, he kind of paints them like they're all pirates, which I sort of love. But it's one, if you're ever in Worcester, Massachusetts, you've got to stop in and look at these amazing murals, because they're just pretty awesome. Let's see here. Last one that I'll read you all. Well, I'm going to read this to you all because I think you'll get the references. So one of the things, obviously, you know, anybody who's bartended knows is you listen, if you bartended in certain places anyway, you listen to the jukebox a lot, right? And so I had to listen a lot to stuff I didn't particularly like, but I also got to listen to some good stuff. And I started thinking, and I was reading Moby Dick at the time, and I started, I don't know why, but daydreaming, what would happen if that character Ishmael, because I was listening to Blondie a lot on the jukebox, what would happen if he wrote to Debbie Harry? I don't know why. It seems a little random now, but that's what, you know, that's what you do when you're, especially if you're bartending during the daytime. So this last piece I'll read is called Ishmael Writes to Debbie Harry. Call me across ocean reveries, call me from against the spiles, call me at the Spouter Inn into the Wailing Church on time, call me with side lunging strides, call me your top 40 hit, hum through Scrimshaw Combe, beat by Pelican Foot, call me the 18th sexiest protagonist, your blubber boiler lover, poet of the Horsehead doldrums. Call me anytime, Sea Pen, your fiddle heart urchin, from CBGB's toilet and graffitied brick, call me Queequeg's bitch, Je m'appelle Ishmael in the voice of Sid Vicious. Call me a Ted Bundy escape plan, an outlier's alibi, a Nantucket sleigh ride, roll me in ambergris from narcotizing sightlines to Max's Kansas City, I'll never get enough. As Jericho was called to the Medusa, as Mocha stove the Essex, as dice of drowned men's bones, call me to the Go-Go, to the Playboy Mansion, Rockaway Beach, or Rock and Roll High School before the trill of your high. Call me your #1 jawbone prosthetic, your heart of glass, your new wave, your stub or Starbuck or flask, your 3-chord Tashtego, your dreaming Sunday cannibal, your 30,000 shark teeth, your humpback rhyme master, breathe like a pod of right whales at midnight into my ear. I could be your stabilitas loci, your garden of amorphous concealment, your finny tribe or spiritual, your rapture. Thank you.
Well, wow.
Thank you.
You know, I've got some, I was going to say I have some questions, but I even more than that want to get the two of you talking to each other. But before I do that, Al, do you have anything by way of encouraging people to buy or
to donate? I'd like to mention again that we like to pass the hat for our featured readers. So there is a donation link that I posted in the chat and also on the YouTube chat. So if you like, it would be wonderful. And we pass that along to our features. Also, in the chat on YouTube, I put names of some of the books of our features, and they did it themselves on the Zoom chat. So the info is there.
All right. Well, thanks. And so Lani and Leah, you were kind of connecting around the idea of poetry and playwriting as things that forms that you both value but see as either maybe weaker muscles or stronger muscles. I don't like weaker or stronger, maybe like less developed or more developed muscles. And I'm thinking that, and who was it? Lani just posted a remark for you, Leah. She says, I hear plays in some of your poetry, such rich characters. So maybe we could use that sense of complementarity for the two of you to maybe comment on each other's work or ask each other about something related to those two forms.
I just thought that because there was a poem where, or I think a couple of poems where some of the characters actually spoke. He says, and I thought that was pretty powerful. And I think that a play is a lot like a poem because you really need to make sure that each line is needed and each character is necessary. You can't like waste words or waste characters, right? Like, I don't believe, well, at least learning as I go along in like just stock characters that just move the story along. I think that it's important for them to have their own story. So it's why I feel that poetry is like writing a play in that sense. Like, everything is needed in that sense on that scene. So
Well, I was thinking a lot about your poems to the dead, and in that way. So the characters from the Vernon Hotel book, almost everybody who lived at the Vernon or were regulars at the Vernon they've died since that book. Yeah, and a lot of them died pretty like within a year or two of my starting that book. That book took a long time for me to convince myself that was done. But in any case, but I wonder, so here's the question I have for you, and it's going to be muddled because I think I'm trying to work through it myself. But I do think in the time now that we're in, where so much loss is happening, what I was struck by the power of using the names that you use for the people who are lost, and how important that is. But I don't know, like, what do we do with how do we, I don't know, memorialize? Is that what I'm not sure. I'm always wondering how to continue to remember people, honor people, especially, and also give a variety of lives, not just one version of things, but I don't know, have you struggled with that at all when you were writing those poems for the dead? Like, what were were there obstacles that you felt that you were up against, or did they come easily? I mean, they might have come easily.
Like that's what I think that was one of the things I said at the beginning. It's like I feel that these poems are really more about how I felt about, or how I'm trying to cope with their losses, and yeah, so yeah, I think that, it's just something that I felt I had to do because I can't think of anything else to do to honor them, and yeah, to keep remembering them.
Yeah.
And, keep their memories alive, I guess. In that sense.
So I wonder if we can think about poems that are about particular characters as having, as showing up in a couple of different forms. Like one might be, epistolary, one might be, a celebration of the person who are trying to give their voice to the readers so that we can know them. That may not be all, but I don't know if that feels relevant to how each of you write about characters, whether they're people or have learned about.
So one of the projects that I did was with Selvita Diaz-Brown. She's a wonderful choreographer, and she Mexican American, and she had an idea to honor the those who passed away, and she wanted to have dances. So it's actually out there. It's called Nuestra Muertos. So visiting our dead, and she told me, do you want to be part of it? And can you write some poems? I said, I already have poems here. They are. And so I gave her a few poems, and then the dancers actually chose the ones that kind of resonated with them and reminded them of their own their own families and friends who passed away. And they did some beautiful dances, so I can share that with you as well. So yeah, so I think that's one way that I think because we're all we're all really connected in one way or another, especially when you think about what's going on right now, right?
Yeah.
We've lost someone, and and we're kind of, we all have similar ways of dealing with losses, I believe.
Well, and I think too, it's like when I was teaching strictly online and the students were they were just losing their shit. But one of the things that I felt like what kept me sort of afloat this year, I've actually had a much harder time for whatever reason. It finally really hit me. But last year, I felt so committed to the idea that learning things and creating things not only distracts us, right? But it helps our mental health. And I told them that. I said, whenever I'm kind of getting a little depressed about, having to stay in, or, our lives being so disrupted, and then of course all the loss around us, I think about what am I curious about, and that sort of thing. But also I think, the creation of poems, of dance, of any kind of art is just it makes us human, that's not a very good specific thing to say, but I think it's true. I think that really felt like a healthy thing to be doing is writing poems during this time. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the second piece that I shared, the one called Misplaced, it also, because, during the pandemic, it's like you're locked down and everyone's like, on each other's nerves, and and we get upset with things with each other, even though we're upset about something else. And then I just started it that way. And then, what happened with those children who were murdered in that school. And so that just kind of went in there, and it's still kind of, I don't know, is that an effect of the pandemic as well, or is it just something that we've been dealing with as a nation, right? This fascination with guns and mental health and all that. So it all came into that piece as well.
What that reminds me of, like writing about things that are really very current and immediate, is this idea that people talked about. I don't know that I've heard them talk about it so much recently, but about how long we should wait to write about something that's immediate. Another side of that is how soon do we feel able to write about something during or after the time of its occurrence. So I'd love to hear what both of you think about that for your own selves.
I think I'll just say that I think I often need time and space for these things. I mean, I know with Ukraine, I've started some things with Baldi, I've started some things, but I need a little time. But other things, other things come quickly, and I'll give you an example. A few years ago, my husband and I we were traveling. We were in Argentina, and I'll just to kind of give you a background of why I'm somewhat of a monster, but it's like sometimes I forget where academia and real life intersect, and sometimes it's not good. Anyway, so we're in Buenos Aires, and I speak Spanish and Latin American cultural studies and lit and things like that were things that were part of my degree. And so I'm really interested. I did a lot of activism in my 20s around Central America, but also Chile, Argentina, and those sorts of things. Anyway, so I'd done all of this reading about the dirty war in Argentina, and I wanted to go to what's essentially it's a memorial / kind of a museum, but not really. But it was the detention center where people were disappeared and tortured. Okay, again, this is academic for me at the time. I just wanted to go, and so I take my husband there, and we're walking around, and it's a really odd place because there's plaques, there's some people's faces on walls, but it's really kind of, if you don't know what it is, it's hard to tell if you don't have a guide. And finally, my husband was like, "Wait, where are we? What is this?" And I was like, "I told you, I'm exasperated." Anyway, and he's like, "You've taken me to basically Auschwitz."
Oh, wow.
And his grandparents had to flee Vienna when the Nazis marched in, right? And so I'm just like, what the hell's wrong with me? So he's really upset. And then at first I'm like, wait, what's wrong? And then I'm not, and then I realized, and so we leave and we're sitting out in the street and we're crying together, and I was like, but then it becomes about language and, my husband, then it also becomes a little bit comical because he's trying to make sense of the Spanish. Anyway, and so I write this poem that came out pretty whole really quickly after this very sad and traumatizing place that I made him go to, and it was about being there, and it was also about his grandparents having to flee. But then it was also about the ways that language looks one way but is another thing, right? And so so the word that we kept seeing over and over on the plaques in this place was the Spanish word delitos, which means crimes, but it looks like, in English, it looks like delights, right? And so anyway, so something like that. I don't know why. Maybe maybe because it was travel, and travel often can really move things along quickly, I think. But I think sometimes when it's things that I'm hearing on the news, and I'm of course moved and angry and crying every time, like have a big ball of emotions about it, but it's also through a screen. I'm not there. And I think that might have something to do with why I need more time and research, or something else has to be a catalyst. Anyway, long answer to your short question, but yeah.
Before I ask Lani to respond, also, I want to note two things. We have 4 minutes left, though we do have the liberty to run over a little bit. So let's try not to go past 5 past, but and see where we are. But the one other thing that your comments made me think about, Leon, maybe you'll address that, Lani, is the question of when does such a powerful event that inspires you to write it, when does writing, to what degree for you does writing about it move you away from feelings so that you can view it from with some perspective, or to what extent does it help you to get to reach into the feelings?
Yeah, it's so funny because I used to have journals and I used to take them everywhere, but now you can use your phone, you can just write on like the notes, and I would just have these notes all over. And yeah, I have to give it distance because it's not really something that I feel that you should share, even when you when you did write something about it. It's really very raw, and and that's when you are in it, right? You're not putting yourself, you're not an observer, but you're in that space, you're in that moment, and then you write it, but you don't want to share it, right? Or you're not ready to share. And I've had those pieces, and like I said, when I included that part of the children in Texas, it just like kind of I wrote that as a separate piece, and it was just very raw. It was just very emotional about it, because how does that happen, right? But it happened, and then it took a while to for me to find the connection between that and personal is always political, right? And I feel that that's when I was able to step aside and see how does this piece work with that piece, and that does that make sense? Did I answer your question? Not sure. But yeah, you do need you need distance, but it helps to write about it in that moment when you're in that space, and then to see it again, to look at it again after
time has passed and see how it fits with what you want to do, to shape that piece.
What we're talking about is a combination of process and perspective.
Yes.
And point of view, if I'm going to be.
Yeah. And no, that's so true, right? Because then when you're in that moment, you don't have that kind of perspective that you need to look at things more or to make it work as a piece that you can actually share with people. So yeah, either way, it's still very personal, right?
Leah, any other thoughts before we wrap up?
I think Lani said it as better than I could. So yeah, I think the power of the emotion along with distance and details, that kind of combination, at least for, I know for me. Anyway, hey, this has been wonderful. And thanks for all
thank you so much.
You've all been so kind and generous, and this has been so interesting. And I loved hearing you read, Lani, and I hope we're in contact.
I want to read your stuff too now that, I've heard it. It's just, so beautiful. Thank you so much.
It's
Thanks,
been
everyone.
so lovely to share the evening with all of you. This is Traveling Molly's. This is what we do, and you make it, all of you make it wonderful in what it is.
Thank you.
Yes.
Nina.
Ditto to that. Everybody here tonight was wonderful. Thank you so much, Leah and Lani, for excellent readings. And I guess all we can say is till next month, second Monday of every month. We've been doing this for 20 years. So.
Or so.